For decades, fall Saturdays in Happy Valley weren't just game days, no. They were holy days. Joe Paterno, with his thick glasses and old school windbreaker, was the high priest of a football cathedral. Penn State didn't just win games, it forged legends, packed trophy cases, and turned "We Are" into a statewide war cry. Opponents didn't just lose, they left Beaver Stadium physically bruised and spiritually humbled. This wasn't just a football program, it was a dynasty. 2 national titles, 5 perfect seasons, a sea of bowl wins. For generations, Penn State was less a school than a fall religion with shoulder pads. But dynasties don't quietly fade, they collapse. And the fall of Penn State football wasn't a gentle unraveling, it was an implosion. A scandal, few damning emails, and the entire empire crumbled almost overnight. To truly understand what happened, we have to go all the way back to 1966 to 2011 when Joe Paterno built a juggernaut. 409 wins, the most in FBS history at the time. 2 Heisman winners, 23 top 10 finishes, and defenses that turned 3 and outs into an art form. ESPN dubbed it Linebacker U for a reason. The school churned out Pro Bowlers like it was part of the curriculum. Recruits showed up in droves. Boosters opened their wallets. Even Beaver Stadium had to keep expanding just to keep up. And at the heart of the machine, Jerry Sandusky. He was the architect of the defense, the face of charity work through his nonprofit, and in a horror that would later rock the nation, a serial predator hiding in plain sight. Sandusky retired in 1999, but still had access to campus facilities. Then came 2001, when assistant coach Mike McQueary walked into the locker room late one night and saw Sandusky in the showers with a young boy. Disturbed, he told Paterno the next day, and Paterno told university officials. But no police were called. Sandusky's keys weren't taken, his access wasn't revoked, and the university decided to handle it, quote, in-house. The Free Report would later describe this as a culture that prioritized the school's reputation over child safety, a system where silence replaced justice. What few knew, however, was that he'd already been investigated in 1998 for inappropriate behavior with a child. And no charges were filed then either. No red flags raised, he stayed on campus and kept bringing boys to football facilities, and no one stopped him. What made all of this possible was Sandusky's charity, the Second Mile. On paper, it was a nonprofit for at-risk youth, but in practice, it became the means by which he met, groomed, and preyed on his victims. Politicians praised it, donors supported it, but behind the curtain, it was the worst kind of disguise. Now let's fast forward to November 5th, 2011. The Pennsylvania Attorney General's office drops a bombshell, a grand jury presentment charging Sandusky with 40 counts of child sexual abuse. University officials Tim Curley and Gary Schultz are also charged with perjury and failure to report. President Graham Spanier rushes it off as, quote, horseplay. Paterno? Well, he immediately announces that he's going to retire at season's end. That wasn't good enough for Penn State. The board of trustees met behind closed doors, then fired him by phone. Yes, by phone, on speaker. One moment, Paterno is the face of the program. The next, he's out of a job, out of the stadium, and off the pedestal. It was like firing your grandpa from the family business via a group text. Except your grandpa also built the business, ran it for 60 years, and literally was the brand. Students started to riot outside Old Main, which is the university's iconic administration building. Some chant his name, some tip over a news van. Inside, defensive coordinator Tom Bradley is promoted to interim head coach. The entire university is spinning. Then, to make matters worse, Sandusky appears on NBC's Rock Center with Bob Costas. When asked, "Are you sexually attracted to young boys?" Sandusky repeats the question, stalls, and finally says, "I have to say no." The interview is worse than anyone imagined. Nationwide, jaws drop. July 12, 2012, the Free Report lands. Commissioned by Penn State and led by former FBI Director Louis Freeh, the report was an independent investigation into the university's handling of the Sandusky scandal. It aimed to uncover who knew what, when they knew it, and why they didn't act. The result was a damning document that would forever change how the world viewed Penn State football. The findings are brutal. Paterno, Spanier, Curley, and Schultz all failed to act. Emails show they worried more about bad publicity than about protecting children. Freeh's 267-page report is a torpedo to the school's credibility. 10 days later, construction crews quietly removed Paterno's statue from outside Beaver Stadium. The statue, by the way, had been installed in 2001, while Paterno was still actively coaching as a tribute to his contributions to the university and college football at large. That alone is crazy. I've never heard of a statue get created for someone while they're still actively on the team. I've never seen that done before, maybe because you could say it's a little premature to do such a thing. Overnight, this statue goes from a symbol of triumph to a national lightning rod. Some call it necessary. Others call it a complete whitewashing of history. Fans speculate, was it buried under the field? Locked in a vault? Melted down into weight plates? Well, the truth is that it's in storage. And still, after a few years, petitions emerge to bring it back, but the university stays silent. The statue remains a ghost. Now, let's cut to July 23rd, 2012. The NCAA drops the hammer. Normally, the NCAA doesn't really get involved in criminal matters, but this case was different. They cited a failure of institutional control, so massive that it justified stepping in. Critics said they overreached. Others said that they didn't go far enough. Well, what were the punishments? A $60 million fine directed toward child abuse prevention efforts, 4-year postseason ban, 111 wins vacated, stripping Paterno's all-time record. Scholarships cut from 85 to 65, and players were allowed to transfer immediately. It was the most severe punishment short of the death penalty. Ohio State fans didn't know whether to laugh, cry, or send fruit baskets. The Big Ten then piles on, withholding $13 million annually in bowl revenue. A new compliance monitor, George Mitchell, is appointed to oversee the program like a parole officer with a whistle. But Penn State's bill didn't stop there. Over $100 million in victim settlements, millions more in legal and PR fees. The total damage? Around $250 million. Boosters split, some furious, some defiant. Donations dipped, then surged. The school launched fundraising campaigns not just for facilities, but for its soul. The impact wasn't just financial. State college businesses suffered. Enrollment wavered. The university's reputation and national rankings took a hit. For years, Penn State wasn't just a school, it was a case study in a crisis. Bill O'Brien, fresh from the Patriots, is named the new head coach and tasked with keeping the team afloat. Star players leave. Silas Redd to USC, Justin Brown to Oklahoma, Anthony Fera to Texas. Yet O'Brien cobbles together an 8-4 season and wins National Coach of the Year, all while facing nonstop questions about ethics, legacy, and whether he'd seen the missing statue. In June 2012, Sandusky is convicted on 45 of 48 counts. His charges included a range of serious offenses: involuntary defiant sexual intercourse, indecent assault, unlawful contact with minors, corruption of minors, and endangering the welfare of children. These offenses dated from 1994 to 2009, involving multiple underage boys he met through his charity, The Second Mile. He was sentenced on October 9th, 2012 to 30 to 60 years in a Pennsylvania state prison. Given his age at the time, which was 68, this essentially amounts to a life sentence. Sandusky was also officially designated as a sexually violent predator, which imposes additional post-prison monitoring requirements. His earliest possible release is set for October 9th, 2042, when he would be 98 years old. He has since filed many appeals, but all of which have been denied. He remains in that Pennsylvania prison today at the age of 81, where he's isolated, monitored, and despised. Tim Curley, the Penn State athletic director, and Gary Schultz, the senior vice president for finance and business, both pled guilty to misdemeanor charges of child endangerment for failing to report the 2001 incident involving Sandusky. Each received sentences of 2 months in jail, followed by additional time under house arrest and probation. Graham Spanier, then president of Penn State, was convicted in March 2017 on one misdemeanor count of child endangerment. He was sentenced to 4 to 12 months, which included 2 months in county jail, house arrest, a $7,500 fine, and 2 hours of community service. He served 58 days in the summer of 2021 after his conviction was reinstated following his appeals. That's crazy. The president of Penn State convicted and put into county jail. The Paterno family didn't take all of this quietly. In 2013, they released their own counter report disputing the free findings and later filed lawsuits to restore JoePa's legacy. In 2015, they succeeded in reinstating his 409 career wins, but restoring his reputation? Well, that remains a more complicated battle. To stir the pot more, Joe Paterno then died of lung cancer on January 22nd, 2012, just 2 months after being fired. His death adds complexity to the tragedy. Was he a scapegoat, a bystander, or something in between? Tens of thousands attended his funeral. His legacy remains fiercely debated. Meanwhile, Penn State football survives. O'Brien leaves for the NFL. James Franklin takes over in 2014, armed with enthusiasm, hashtags, and a recruiting plan to rebuild from rubble. The scholarship reductions forced creative roster moves. Walk-ons became starters, red shirts became game changers, and Franklin once joked that the cafeteria line was a scouting ground for special teams. But somehow, Penn State got right back to winning. A stunning win over Ohio State in 2016, a Big Ten title, a Fiesta Bowl victory. But the program's aura has changed. The stadium still fills, the chants still echo, and the team still fights. But the dynasty that once stood as unshakable, yeah, that was destroyed overnight. And that truth still lingers in every roar from the stands. If you like this video, why don't you keep watching more of my college football stories from glory to grit? Until next time.